Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Wednesday morning to you all. Hope you guys are getting up and feeling well out there this morning and having a great start to your day and a great week out there so far. Got you a pretty lengthy video this morning discussing the increased severe weather threat. I'm really going to discuss a lot on the state of Texas. We have a threat of all hazards, significant levels of all hazards. We have a chance for hurricane force winds as far as damaging winds, gigantic hail, and an increased tornado threat now, where we have not only a 10% chance of a tornado within 25 miles of any given location in an area, which does include the higher populated area of the Dallas-Fort Worth region, we also have a 10% risk of a stronger tornado, which is an EF2 or higher. So things have increased overnight, and we're going to talk about that. Not only are we going to talk about who could potentially see a storm based off the HRRR model, we're going to talk about kind of what's going into this, and I'm going to do the best I can. We're trying to explain it in a way that you guys as an audience can understand, and that's always a big goal here at this channel. But this is a very complex setup today, and I think it's important to kind of dive into what's really driving this setup today, and we'll try to do that for you guys. We'll talk about Florida. You guys could see some big storms today. Another threat of large hail. There's actually a hatched risk, which means there's a chance for significant hail, 2-inch diameter or larger in the state of Florida today. A pretty large chunk of Florida also. And then we'll talk about everybody else also. So if you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. And if you guys got anything that I can pray about or pray over, as always, please put those in the comments below so I can pray over it and so others can do so too. Really appreciate the support as we get a little bit deeper into the year, just into the warmer months. Things begin to slow down a little bit, but you guys continue to tune in. So I really appreciate the continued support. So let's open up this widget over here, make sure she's working. She is. So let's get rolling. So you see this spin on the map, right? That's a kind of a mid-level closed low right over this region. All these kind of, everything that I'm about to mention kind of comes together to really bring this severe weather today. So this closed low, this upper trough, if you will, is it's beginning to get that neutral tilt to it. So we mentioned that a positive tilt is a weaker system. When it becomes more neutral tilted, it's strengthening. When it's a negative tilt, you really have a deepening low pressure if you have some kind of surface low popping off the base of this. So in this instance, it's taken on this kind of shape right into here. So it's beginning to get that neutral tilt. This is more so a positive tilt, if you will. And then when they really start to tilt like this, this is when, you know, it begins to become a significant event, whether we're talking about heavy wet snow, whether we're talking about severe weather, whatever it may be. The dynamics really begin to max out with these kind of setups. So we'll get rid of all this. One thing that you are probably going to have a hard time seeing, even I do, on the water vapor loop, is there is a surface low right into here. Okay, we'll put a little L right here. So this is actually going to aid in really creating an unstable environment that's already building this morning in North Texas. There's also going to be a warm front somewhere in here, and really everybody into this region right in here could really get some really bad weather later this afternoon. Dew points will rise well into the upper 60s, which in response you'll have CAPE levels 3,000 joules per kilogram, mixed layer CAPE. And yeah, you'll have a little bit of a low level jet in response to this low pressure that'll kind of drift more so in this way. So you will have low-level winds that really build into this region. I know this is kind of everywhere and it's very sloppy. Just trying to explain kind of what you're seeing in a more broad view, what's going on. We'll talk about it a little bit more later in the video also. So let's go on and get this off, but this is going to be the main story, severe weather right here in this portion of the country. Storm Prediction Center, and we'll zone into these areas, but a more broad look. Enhanced region right here, Dallas-Fort Worth, down to the Waco area, you know, all the way. Abilene is not included, but you do have a slight risk. There was some monster hailstorms out here in this portion of Texas last night. A lot of wind chills got blown out and some storm chasers. But down here to Waco, you know, over here to Stephenville, Weatherford, Mineral Wells, Granbury, I think it's Cleburne. I think somebody corrected me. I appreciate everybody who corrected me. I think that W word is what really kicked my butt for sure. But not even going to try to pronounce it, because I'll read your comments and about 10 people will tell me how to pronounce it and I'll repeat it in my head. And then I try to pronounce in the video. It's like I have a total I just forget completely how to say it. So that's just part of a million things coming to your mind at one time when you create these videos. But there's also a slight risk of severe weather down here in Florida, and this is really hail driven. So we'll talk about the risk areas here in a second. We'll break this down a lot more detail for you guys. But I do want to mention there is a slight risk for flash flooding guidance to be met in this region. That means that in this yellow area, there's at least a 15% risk of flash flood guidance being met. So some of these areas have already seen a lot of rain, especially back in Oklahoma. You guys are going to see more rain. It's already raining in portions of North Texas and Oklahoma this morning. Kind of some convection riding the Red River. But you guys could see a lot of rain in this region. This doesn't need to be just totally forgotten about. You don't have a big time risk of flash flooding, but you do have a risk. So let's talk about the severe weather threat. So this is a zoned in look, enhanced region, which does include right over the Dallas-Fort Worth area. It extends, this is a level 3 out of 5, all the way over to, I would say, the Longview area. It does include Tyler, Palestine. Doesn't quite get all the way to the Texarkana area, but you guys do have a slight risk of severe storms. I would say in this region, right into here, it really goes down here, I would say later this evening into the overnight hours, where you could have a big-time complex of storms. Basically, these supercells that really get going earlier in the day will kind of evolve into a bowing out line of storms that could really produce a big-time damaging wind threat. But, down here to Waco, pretty much almost all the way down here to Temple, Stephenville, Weatherford, you guys, and this goes all the way, I would say, through Mineral Springs, pretty much all the way over to Breckenridge, also Eastland. You guys have an enhanced risk north of Dallas-Fort Worth area, the Denton area, McKinney, almost up the Sherman area, Texas. So it's going to be under the gun today. Tornado risk. It's not centered necessarily right over the Dallas-Fort Worth area, but the Dallas-Fort Worth, Stephenville, point south, down here close to Waco. Not only do you have in the yellow area a 10% risk to see a tornado, you also have, and it's not added, it's its own risk. I always want to reiterate that. So it's not like 10 plus 10 equals 20. It's its own risk. You also have a 10% hatched risk, which means you have a 10% risk within 25 miles at any given point in this yellow area to see a strong tornado, which is considered an EF2 or higher. Another big threat today, and I meant to push hail first, but here we go, is damaging winds. So the red area, that is a 30% risk to see winds in excess of 50 knots or higher. That's 55 to 60 miles per hour in mile per hour readings. The yellow area, that's a 15% risk of the same criteria within 25 miles at any given point. And then you got the hatched risk. So this is really, I think this will happen later this evening when any kind of supercells really turn into just a segment of line of storms. And I really think that's when your low-level jet really gets cranking, winds mix to the surface, and these storms will really begin to have an enhanced and a big-time increased damaging wind threat. So you have a 10% risk inside kind of the central to western quadrant of this 30% risk to see winds in excess of hurricane force or faster, stronger. Okay, that's 65 knots or higher, so 70 to 75 miles per hour. You're going to get some stronger wind gusts. Going to be some powerful storms. Hail threat with this, you have a 30% risk of hail in excess of 1 inch or diameter or larger in the red area, 15% risk in the yellow area. Make sure I get that right. Yeah, 15% risk. And then, guys, you also have the hatch risk. So supercell mode will be ongoing well west of the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So you have that 10% risk of hail in excess of 2 inch or diameter or larger in this region. But I'm telling you, you're going to have hail baseball size. You're going to have the potential for some gigantic hail. You're going to have some big-time cape that builds into this region. And it's going to get nasty right here in northern and even central sections of Texas later this afternoon. So let's break down what a lot of people want to see first, and that is how this can unfold tomorrow. So we'll take a look at kind of what's going on right at this moment. If radar scope will pull up, I mean, you got some storm action that's been ongoing through the Dallas-Fort Worth area already. You had a storm that just moved through the Weatherford area. These are probably producing a little bit of hail. You go back here, up here to the Red River, the Oklahoma-Texas border. You already got a severe thunderstorm ongoing. This is probably producing hail already. This is moving in general kind of east-northeast, if you will. But I'm really expecting this environment to really destabilize this afternoon, okay? And then I'm expecting somewhere into this region to really have some big time supercells that really get fired up, and then they'll drift down into the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and then a little bit later tonight, the low-level jet will get ramped up, and I think you'll have a big tornado threat right into here with a kind of a low pressure right over here that's kind of drifting through. This is going to bring that low-level jet. Winds will really start cranking about, a mile above our heads in these regions, and this is when we need to watch out. So a lot of energy will fire up in that first circle that I did. So we'll watch. And here you go. Here's a wide range of this, the whole entire state of Texas. I wish I could zone in just in this area right in here, but no worries. We'll get this going. So if you're wondering what time frame we're at, this is 8 a.m., but this is an Eastern time. So back it at 1 hour. So this is 7 a.m. So this is about another hour or so for you folks out here in Texas. We'll get this going. I'll have to get this in motion again. Click this icon. And then here we go. So we're getting into 8, 9 a.m., 10 a.m., 11 a.m., lunchtime. A lot of slow-moving storm action. Could get a flooding threat that kind of arrives in this area up here near the Red River. And then this is when we begin to watch this section right here. I always remember that the Dallas and Fort Worth area sit right in here because of this little small county that sits just east of Dallas. But we'll get this cranking up. This is around 1 p.m. This is when this wide open sector builds into this region. You got a warm front up here. You got a lot of ingredients building into this region right into here. Dew points rising well into the 60s, all the way up into this region west of Dallas, and then, of course, around the Dallas area. I do apologize if I constantly mention Dallas and the Fort Worth area. That is obviously the more highly populated area that is going to be under the gun, but I know there's many other towns and cities, and you guys know that I try to do the best I can trying to mention all these towns and communities. But we'll stop it right here. It's around 2 p.m., right? Okay, I would say right around the Wichita Falls area, maybe a little bit southeast. Storms really begin to strengthen on kind of the bottom tail end of all this convection that will already be ongoing throughout the morning and early afternoon hours. But then bang, here we go. We get into about 4 p.m., okay, and I would say, let's see if we can get this right here. Graham, Seymour, Breckenridge, Albany. I don't know if they pronounce it Albany or Albany down here in Texas. You guys could get some isolated, very strong storms that really fire up. But then they become a little bit more widespread. You get a little bit later into the afternoon. We'll stop it here. This is around 6 p.m. Texas time. Remember, Fort Worth, Dallas right in here. You got some powerful storms just west of you guys around this time frame, producing large, the potential gigantic hail, baseball, golf ball size hail. We look right here, Stephenville right down here, Weatherford, just west of Fort Worth, Mineral Springs. I would say, the Weatherford, Mineral Springs area, I would say watch out anywhere from 6, 7 p.m. But these storms, I think initially will just have a massive hail threat, damaging winds, isolated tornado threat. But I do think as we get right into the late afternoon, early evening time frame, all the way to around midnight, or just after, you guys will start to have basically what I'm saying is these storms will begin to spin. You will have a tornado threat. This begins to drift into the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And this isn't exact science. It's just one model, guys. So it's going to be hard to pinpoint exactly where the worst storm is going to be, or multiple storms. But, you take this all the way out to about 8 p.m. You got some big storms right over the Dallas-Fort Worth area, just north and northeast of the Dallas area, right into the Greenville area, McKinney, Rockwell, and Cleburne. You guys are getting hit hard, potentially. I use that word a lot because this isn't exact science. But storms are trailing all the way down to Stephenville. And then these storms continue, right? I think you could potentially be in the clear by the time you get into late evening in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. But then I would say eastern Texas to northeast Texas, you guys begin to get under the gun. And this is around 11 p.m. tonight. These are when these storms can evolve into a mesoscale complex system, convective system out here, where they could really, really get an enhanced, big-time, damaging wind threat in this region. And these storms start to move through, start to slam areas like Tyler, down here to Waco. They start to flirt with the College Station area that's down here but do they lose some intensity? Not sure. Don't want to leave you folks out here in Central Texas out. Central Texas, like Brownwood, you guys could see some storm action, a little bit more isolated in nature, but a little bit closer into this region with the surface low kind of moving more so east rather than northeast. Will kind of be in this area, and really the winds will be cranking in this region. And I really think these storms will just continue to maintain strength into the early overnight hours. Into the overnight hours, into the wee hours, into the early morning hours into tomorrow. And these storms will continue, and they'll be slow moving. And then by the time you get into areas like Lufkin, Palestine, Longview, even Shreveport, Louisiana, Center, Carthage, you guys could be dealing with some storms after midnight for sure. And then, waking up tomorrow morning, some storms just west of the Houston area where some leftover energy will still be on going into this region. So I hope I covered some areas. Basically, in a nutshell, late afternoon, right around rush hour, or an hour or two after, this is when it's going to be the biggest threat for the Dallas-Fort Worth area. This drifts in general southeast or east later into the evening hours. So it really cranks up, I would say, early to mid-afternoon west of the Dallas area. Okay, so let's talk about some ingredients. It'll take a minute for each little panel to pull up. So you can actually see the warm front in this area. When we talk about how complex this is going to be, there's a warm front. Normally along the warm front and just south of the warm front, that's a boundary. So it's basically competing wind directions on each side of the boundary. What is winds moving in the opposite directions going on either side? What does that do? Creates a spin to these updrafts. So that'll be right into here where you have a cutoff between marginal dew points in the 50s and then workable dew points in the 60s that will support severe weather. So these dew points, you'll notice it'll get even more humid as we work our way deeper into the afternoon in central Texas all the way to the Dallas area. Okay, and then as these storms move through the atmosphere, you'll have a little bit more stable, technical, dry air that moves in behind these storms. And then, the dew point's lower. But big time moist air mass, which is a thermodynamic for severe weather, will build into North Texas. So this is, you can put them pretty much do a check off the box as far as ingredients, as far as dew points. And typically when you have high dew points, you're going to have high CAPE levels. And certainly here we go. Let's see if we can get this in motion for you guys. Here we go. We'll start off this morning. Arctic CAPE building into central and west central Texas. This is mixed layer CAPE. And then you can actually see the boundary very well here. You see how it goes from 2,000 joules per kilogram of CAPE, which is a lot of fuel to the atmosphere for these storms to munch off of, to like 4. That tells you that north of this boundary, you have what we call stable conditions. You're not going to get any severe weather in this region. But everything that builds just south of this boundary, the warm front, will be energy supportive enough for all hazards. So you keep this rolling, and these storms will kind of drift east-southeast, if you will. Look at this, all this CAPE building down here. You got 2,000 to 3,000 joules per kilogram. Models could be underdoing this a little bit, but CAPE really builds into the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And I would argue that it's going to be more than 1,000 joules per kilogram. It'll probably be closer to 2,000, I would bet you. But this is a big-time environment that is going to provide fuel for these storms developing just southeast of this weak low pressure that'll be kind of drifting along kind of the Oklahoma-Texas border throughout the afternoon hours. So, and it's pretty wild to see. I love showing you this. As these storms kind of eat away at this CAPE, it disappears, right? Creates a stable atmosphere. But all this that builds ahead of these storms that are sitting right into here eats away all this energy, fuels off of it, and then the atmosphere stabilizes. It's the same way in the summer too. It's just how the atmosphere works. Not only is that warm front going to cause an enhanced tornado threat, okay, as this surface low, and you can actually see the surface low here on the wind barbs. I'm going to try to show it to you guys. We'll take it all the way out till about lunchtime. You see how the wind barbs are circling right into this region? You got winds coming out the south, winds coming out the southeast, winds coming out the east, winds coming out the don't want to get my wind barbs mixed up. Winds coming out the northeast, winds coming out the north, winds coming out the northwest. That indicates a circulation. That is our weak surface low. You can see it pretty well here on the HRRR model. And typically, unless you have a super strong low pressure, typically, right of the surface low, you have a low-level jet that ramps up. And if you notice, it's not a huge one. But a lot of times in your biggest tornado threats, you don't have a massive wind field. Okay, so building in this area, you got a 30 to 40 knot low-level jet, and this works its way right over the Dallas-Fort Worth area throughout the afternoon, evening hours. So you have a 30, 35 knot low-level jet that really gets going. And we certainly need to watch out. It's not large, but you don't need it to be large. Here's a circulation right into here. I would argue this is more so traveling in North Texas rather than southern Oklahoma. And you will have winds that mix to the surface that are going to be very strong. So this system kind of creates its own low-level jet, if you will. Some of these storms create kind of their own wind profile, if that makes any sense, or their own environment, okay? Very complex. So along this, the warm front mixed with the fact that you have already boundaries, outflow boundaries that are just kind of waiting to get kind of fueled off of, meaning there's kind of leftover boundaries from convection the day before. These can actually help aid and spin up storm systems. They can be, you can't physically see them, but they're out there. And maybe I would love to be able to talk a lot more on this. One, when I know more on this, because I'm always learning, guys. That's one thing I always preach on, is you never stop learning. One of the phrases in the weather community is never stop chasing, but to me, it's never stop learning. But, one day I would like to be able to go over some of this stuff, to be able to explain it in a way where you guys can probably understand a little bit better. But in general, this is going to create us a tornado threat. And, this is always the thing people worry about the most, is the tornado threat. And the Storm Prediction Center, the significant tornado parameter certainly spikes for a pretty small area as we start to enter the late afternoon, early evening time frame, in and around the Dallas-Fort Worth area, just south also. I really want to watch out also, for you folks down here too, Granbury, Cleburne, Weatherford, Stephenville, Hico, Hillsboro. Watch out right as you get just after dinner time, just after rush hour. Just because you see a 6 or 10 doesn't mean there's a 10 out of 10 chance to see a tornado. It just means there's ingredients are there for tornadic potential. Anything over a 1 means there's some ingredients there. Of course, the higher the number, the more ingredients. So just because you see extremely high numbers right into here, like these pinks and whites, which indicates 11, 12 on the significant tornado parameter, I don't mean that there's going to be a 100% chance to see a tornado. It just means there's a lot of ingredients there, but that doesn't always mean that it makes its way to a latch tornado at the surface. But the Storm Prediction Center, there is a slight risk. We're moving forward, by the way. Now we're going to talk about Florida. Slight risk of severe weather in the state of Florida today. This is really aided off a hail threat, which we not only have a 15% risk of hail, 1 inch of diameter or larger, but also a 10% risk on its own of significant hail in 2 inch or diameter or larger. So there's going to be some big hailstorms today in the state of Florida. And it sucks because you guys have had some nasty weather, but expect another round of nasty weather today. Wind threat, and you got the 15%. You got the 5% risk, but there's going to be an explosive environment for hail, tornado risk, and not high at all in this region. It's below 2%. So let's talk about a broad look at what could happen today. There's a couple things going on. One obviously being Florida, but I want to mention there is a little short wave that's going to kind of get re-energized in South Carolina today. Some rain moving through the southern Appalachian Mountains. This will drift even into northern South Carolina, the Piedmont and North Carolina today. So some rain showers could greet you this afternoon in areas of the Carolinas. And then we'll watch for some storm activity in kind of the central Midlands all the way down to the low country in South Carolina. The Storm Prediction Center does not show this area much love today. Not even barely a general risk of thunderstorms. Certainly not a marginal risk, but I wouldn't be surprised in the next upgrade or two, they bring a marginal risk all the way into the low country of South Carolina. Just my thoughts. Some of these little weak short waves can produce regardless of not having a lot of atmospheric players. And for my folks in Florida, I'll zone in on your area here in a second. But you can see big-time thunderstorms get going around, I would say, mid to late afternoon, explosive thunderstorm development, kind of in the same regions. If you're vacationing down here in Florida, Disney World, wherever you're doing, Universal Studios, don't be surprised if you see a nasty cloud build off in the distance and all of a sudden you're getting hailed on. This could be the scenario in Florida later on. But the leftover energy from Texas will trail out overnight. It could be a rocky late overnight hours for areas of eastern Texas, and then these storms will try to refire up tomorrow morning. You could be greeted to a nasty line of storms in southern Louisiana as we're waking up for our Thursday morning. Running out of breath here, but still got a little bit left. And a little bit closer look at the deep south with this threat. I want to mention some strong to severe storms are possible in Alabama, southern Mississippi, central areas also today, but they're very isolated in nature. But any that do get going could produce some hail and some gusty winds and maybe even isolated tornado. But I really want to watch this as we're getting into tonight, into tomorrow morning. Big time line of storms will be working its way through the southern half of Louisiana. Somebody asked, what about New Orleans? When are we going to get some rain? You will certainly see some rain tomorrow morning. Talking about Florida, got to speed this up a little bit. Big time storms will fire up. You already will have one probably around the 2 to 3 o'clock afternoon area right here on the eastern the eastern coast of Florida, well south of St. Augustine into this region around the Space Coast. Big storm might fire up. Large hail's possible. Even some hail with these storms down here in Miami. But then bang, I would say right around 5 to 7 p.m. Could be a very stormy evening from Gainesville Point south all the way through Orlando. There's a chance that the Tampa Bay area might not get any storm action, but if you work your way about an hour east into the peninsula of Florida inland, these will be some big time storms. I would say just off the coastline into the central peninsula of Florida, we'll see the biggest storm threat. Big time hail is possible in excess of 2-inch diameter or larger. The rest of the Northeast, another day with just sporadic showers from New York State through Vermont, through New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Connecticut, all the way up to Maine. Some of these could produce some small hail. One of a viewer up there told me that, it was a little bit of hail. I believe she said she lives in Vermont, New Hampshire. Don't kill me for forgetting. I appreciate you. You comment on every single one of my videos. But some of these with a lot of cold air aloft could produce some small hail. And it won't, you might have, a lot of times people associate hail with a powerful thunderstorm. But when you have a lot of cold air aloft, hail isn't easily obtainable. And that'll be the case. But some showers will fly through. They'll be very sporadic. And then as we're getting a little bit later overnight tonight to the wee hours of the morning, a little bit more scattered in nature for New Jersey, Long Island, southern areas of New York State, Connecticut. So you'll wake up to some wet conditions in New Jersey, New York City area, Long Island, all southern New England, places like that. The north central U.S., you'll have a system that kind of flies down here. Will deliver some showers this afternoon. And eastern North Dakota will make their way through the northern half of Minnesota. Maybe even a rumble of thunder will be cold enough in northeast Minnesota for some snow, for some rain to mix with some snow up in this region. This could deliver a quick inch of wet snow. It's crazy. We're entering the last days of April, but here we are. And then as we're making our way into the wee hours of the morning, tomorrow morning, some rain mixed with some snow could make its way through the UP of Michigan. Pretty impressive. So don't let this surprise you one bit, but it's very likely that we're going to be dealing with a little bit of snow. Tomorrow morning, might wake up to a white ground for my folks up here that view. In the UP of Michigan, might wake up to a white ground with some snow flying around and still flying around as you're waking up. So, and here's the predicted snow from the National Weather Service. Not much. Far northeast Minnesota, you see an inch or two, and then maybe a dusting in the UP. Temperatures today, very warm, but you got to get pretty much down in the far areas of the deep south, the Gulf coastline, where it's going to get into the 80s. It just tells me there's a lot of thermodynamics building into this region. But there's like I said, there's a big boundary. You go just north of the Dallas-Fort Worth area, you're going to struggle to get out the 50s today. Oklahoma, rain-cooled air, and some rain-cooled air will be in effect in the southern Appalachian Mountains. Upstate South Carolina might struggle to get out the 50s. But you go down to Columbia Point South, 70s. And then your area right here where you're not really seeing any rain-cooled air, 60s and 70s for highs, and just chilly conditions in the Great Lakes region. But it'll be warming up a little bit more today for you folks. I'm not going to get detailed into this, but there's already a slight risk for severe thunderstorms along the Gulf coastline. You can tell I'm out of words, guys. 30 minutes long. Gulf coastline down here. There's a tornado threat with a complex line of storms that will be making its way through this area that will have an embedded tornado threat. We'll talk about that tonight. And then that 15% risk of winds pushing 50 knots or higher, and then not much of a hail threat tomorrow. We'll also have a severe weather threat for day 3, which is our Friday. We'll have another severe weather threat for Texas. It just seems like you guys just keep getting hit, but we got to watch the southeast. Does this increase at all? I do think there will be some big-time thermodynamics in the southeast for Friday that could promote a severe weather threat. So thank you all for tuning in. Appreciate people who watch these entire videos. I'm running way behind. I got to leave my house in about 7 minutes. So somehow I have to shower between now and the next 6 or 7 minutes. So definitely pray for me there. But God bless all y'all. Have a great day. Please stay safe out there. I'll have you an update this evening. I know a lot of people will be viewing the people who go live, but I'll certainly will do my part here to keep you guys ahead of the storm. But God bless all y'all. Have a great day. Stay safe. And I'll talk to you this evening.